David felt a chilling cold, as if a sudden fan of winter wind had enveloped him. His eyes remained closed, but he could not find the strength to open them. He was vaguely aware of his surroundings, immersed in sensations that seemed to foreshadow something terrible. Clenching his fists, he felt his body react that he was alive, but where was the all-consuming terror that was encompassing him coming from? Suddenly, a light breeze blew through the anxiety that covered him. What could it mean? David suddenly realized he was standing outside, his nostrils filled with the light scent of wildflowers, and then, finally, he dared to open his eyes. He found himself in the middle of a deserted field, surrounded by nothing. Looking around, he saw nothing, even putting his hand to his eyes. His face felt the pleasant blowing of the wind, but the flowers under his feet seemed somehow incomprehensible, as if they possessed a mind of their own. "What am I doing here? How did I end up here?" he muttered, his voice sounding muffled in the desolate space. "This place is called the In-Between," came a strange voice from behind him. David turned around and saw an unusual figure in a long cloak. The face was hidden under a wide hood, and it became impossible to tell who or what was in front of him. The voice was so unusual that the floor was impossible to tell if it was male or female. Although the cloak swayed lightly in the wind, the flowers and grass remained motionless. David took a step forward, but the mysterious figure raised a hand, stopping him. "There's no need to come any closer, David. You have many questions and we can answer them," came a voice. David froze in place, then dared to ask, "What am I doing here? What happened? And who are you?" The figure lowered its hand, and again the cryptic answer rang out. "Who are we? You don't need to know that. Do you realize the reason you are here? Remember. Do you realize what has happened?" As the words were spoken, a lightning bolt of memories flashed through David's mind, bringing back the terrible images of the accident. Yes, it had been a terrible accident. He remembered driving with his wife Sarah when everything changed. The horrible details of the accident surfaced one by one, like a slow-motion replay. A large truck had drifted into the oncoming lane, and David had been unable to avoid the collision. The last memory was his wife's face, frozen in a mask of inevitability. David knelt down in front of the mysterious figure. Covering his eyes with his hands, he couldn't hold back the tears. His heart ached, bearing witness to the inevitable. Through his sobs, he whispered, "She's gone." The cloaked figure only replied, "Yes, she didn't survive." David shook his head. "And me? You're alive, but you're stuck in the middle of searching for answers to your questions. It's up to you to come back." Minutes flowed in sobs. Then David calmed down. "What does all this mean? Why am I here?" Suddenly, it dawned on him. A single thought loomed in his mind, which he spoke aloud. "I can make a difference. I can make things right." There was silence for a few seconds before the figure spoke. "That's why you're here. You have a chance. If you want it so badly, you can change everything. But you only have 3 tries, and time is out of your hands. We'll choose the moment. All you have to do is make the right choice." "Time? What do you mean I can't choose the time?" David frowned, wiping away his tears. However, the figure did not answer his question, only uttered in a loud whisper, "Close your eyes." David instantly obeyed, but the next moment there was a sudden pop, causing him to jump up and open his eyes sharply. Before him stretched the car dealership where he and Sarah had picked out a car. It was the day they had purchased the car they had been in an accident in. So why was he here at this moment? Suddenly David realized that he had to make the right choice. Now was his chance to change everything, just not to buy that car. I mean, that was the catch, right? As soon as he made his decisive choice, his mind was engulfed in a whirlwind of new images. Memories formed, distorted by his new decision. Sarah at the doctor's office, crying. Sarah in the hospital, surrounded by tubes and machines. David seeing his wife off on her final journey. His children beside him, they are all crying. And David throwing handfuls of earth. Darkness fell over him, and a moment later he found himself sitting before the cloaked figure again. The figure spoke. "You made the first choice. Are you happy with your fate?" David looked at the flowers and shook his head. "No, I made a choice, but it only brought me more suffering. My wife left anyway, only suffering more. And our children suffered as well. My choice did not bring me happiness." The figure was silent, and David asked with hope in his voice, "I have another try, don't I? Eager to use your next attempt. All right, we're giving you a second chance. Be careful. Now you only have one opportunity left. Try not to make a mistake. Close your eyes." There was another loud clap. David took a deep breath and suddenly found himself in his house. He and Sarah were packing before the fateful trip. It had been so recent. So why had he come back to this very place? What would he have to do? David froze in the middle of the room, his hands involuntarily letting go of the things that had fallen to the floor. Sarah, who was passing by, asked worriedly, "What's wrong, dear? Are you feeling ill?" David looked at his wife, his only Sarah. He couldn't lose her. Without her, life would be meaningless. They had planned this trip so much, but now he realized he had to change everything. He had to stop, not go anywhere. Then maybe everything would change. He wrapped his arms around his wife and pulled her close to him. Breathing in the scent of her hair, he smelled a delightful aroma. "My love, let's stay home," he whispered in her ear. Sarah looked at him perplexed. "Did you get free? Why? I mean, we've been looking forward to this trip. The trip cost us a lot of money. We spent so much money." David pulled her against him again. "So what? I want to spend my vacation at home. I want to go to places that are special to us. Wander in the park where we first met. I want to be with you, but only here at home." Sarah, agreeing to her husband's requests, stayed home. But immediately new memories began to surface in David's mind. He had changed his fate, but the event remained the same. She got behind the wheel to drive to the bakery for fresh buns. She had been in an accident alone. Now she was gone forever. David felt the darkness envelope him again. When he opened his eyes again, a figure in a black cloak stood before him. His eyes were filled with tears. "I couldn't change anything again. I have failed again. I have no power to bring her back," David whispered. The stranger stared at him silently. "I have one more try. But what happens if I fail again?" David asked with concern in his voice. "You have one last opportunity left. After that, you will go your own way. You will choose your last road. You won't get another chance. We won't be able to help you," came the reply. David nodded doomfully and closed his eyes. This time, when he opened them again, he found himself on a bench in the park. The bright sun was illuminating everything around him, and people were bustling here and there. David felt lost, not knowing why he was here. But then he noticed a girl approaching him from the side. It was Sarah. Oh my God, this is the day they first met. This is the moment. Unbelievable. Every detail of that day was in his memory. Now she was walking past him. David knew she would drop her scarf and he must return it to her. That was how they had met. It meant he had been brought here to make the right choice. Now he must change his fate. If he doesn't return the scarf to her, they won't even meet. He won't know anything more about her. She will remain forever unrecognizable to him. So now was the moment to make a move for her. The girl walked past the bench and her scarf fell at David's feet. He looked at the scarf but did not touch it. Sarah was getting farther away from him, and David's heart pounded in unison with his anxiety. He knew that the next memory would not include Sarah, their happiness, their children. Everything that made him happy would be gone. He would face a new reality where his beloved Sarah would not be there. For a moment, David stared at the scarf in silence, then stood up from the bench and grabbed it. He raced after Sarah to return the scarf to her. He had made his choice, to leave it alone. He couldn't do otherwise. His destiny is to live with her, to have children, to love his family. He will accept his fate no matter what. It's the only right way. When he caught up with the girl and returned the scarf to her, the darkness around him was once again engulfed. David opened his eyes, but the cloaked figure remained motionless. There was an awkward silence. Finally, the strange creature spoke. You didn't even try to change your fate this time. Why? David slowly replied, Because I can't change anything. My destiny is to live my life as it is given. I want to cherish every memory of my wife. She is my destiny, and everything that has happened to us is part of that destiny. You can't take away that right to decide. The cloaked figure was silent for a long moment before a loud voice rang out, You have made your choice. Now decide where you will go. What do you mean? David asked confusedly. You can move on with your life, or you can leave. The decision belongs to you alone. We await your decision, the cloaked figure said. David thought for a moment before saying firmly, I want to live. I need to be here for our children. They don't deserve to lose both parents. I have to get through this. I have to help them deal with this loss. I just have to. The cloaked figure nodded. It will be as you decide. Your time has come. And in the next instant, everything disappeared. David plunged into darkness. When David opened his eyes, he saw his children sitting next to his hospital bed. They were crying, and he himself began to sob with them. For Sarah's sake, he must live and care for his children. In their eyes, he saw not only the grief of losing their mother, but also the gratitude that their father was still with them. David had made the right choice. Years later, the man sat down on a bench in a cozy courtyard and smiled. He watched his grandchildren having fun on the trampoline. Many years passed, David raised his children on his own. Despite the fact that fate had separated them in different cities, they always came to visit their father. They were now parents themselves and took their children to see their grandfather, who repeatedly pondered the incidents after the accident. He didn't know if his encounter with the cloaked figure had been real or just a fantasy, but he was sure, with his decision, he had done the right thing. He had helped his children, raised them the way he and Sarah could have raised them together. He had given them all the love he could fit in his heart, and he had no regrets. He feels happy. Yes, he can confidently say now that he is happy. See, I did it, he whispered, though a trembling confession trembled in his soul. Though I hesitated, afraid to make this decision without you. I tried, even when doubts haunted me. Our children are happy. Our grandchildren, too. What more could one want for complete happiness? Only your presence. But it was impossible. You and I will meet again. I believe it, he continued, smiling weakly. Then I will tell you everything, every detail. My love, whispered David, as if addressing an invisible memory. And then he felt a light breeze, though nothing moved around him. That gentle breeze touched only his right cheek, as if an invisible hand had touched him. David felt a tear roll down his cheek, realizing that it was her, his gentle wife Sarah, his invisible support. Maybe she was the one guiding him every step of the way, helping him make decisions in life. You can hear me, my love, he whispered. I feel like you're always there for me. Thank you, my love, for helping me, for always being there for me. I'm sure of it now. Once more, David felt the light touch of the wind on his cheek. Then it subsided. He wiped away a lone tear, smiling as he looked at his grandchildren. He felt light and peaceful, as if he had become the happiest man on earth.